Welcome to the Cinema Spotlight, hosted by James Sena. All things entertainment. Grab your popcorn and enjoy the show. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Spotlight. This is a show where we dissect all things movies, TV, and everything in between. I am your host and self-proclaimed media expert, James Sena. With the 2023 Academy Awards finally behind us, this episode will serve as a little bit of a transitional episode between quote-unquote seasons. New segments, new music, and more guests are all currently in the works, and I'm very excited to share all of those up-and-coming changes with all of you. Oscar watches will, of course, still be happening, so have no fear regarding that classic segment, although today's episode is actually the first episode without it. It'll be here, just likely not every episode. I want to sprinkle some new stuff in too. For today's episode, we'll start things off with an Oscars recap. Next up will be a segment called Franchise Focus. And if that's not enough, we're going to cap off the episode with a list of movies that are my personal most anticipated movies for this upcoming year. And with that, this episode of the Cinema Spotlight is about to begin. And of course, here's an official spoiler warning for any and all content discussed here today. If you wish to skip around to avoid spoilers, you can find timestamps in the description both on YouTube and Spotify for your convenience. So let's shine a spotlight on the 2023 Academy Awards.
Oscar Watch. Oscar Watch.
I'm realizing that I don't think I've ever actually addressed the Oscar Watch theme song that I've been putting in my episodes, and I hope everyone enjoys that little jingle that I threw in there. I want more type of custom music like that to enhance the overall experience, so that's something to look forward to for future episodes. I just had to throw it in there though because it's a little transitional song, and well, I don't have the heart to take it out of the episode even if there isn't an Oscar Watch. That being said, it is an Oscar related segment. Speaking of which, for the first time ever, I watched the Oscars from beginning to end with an actual care for just about every category, with obviously some of the smaller categories I don't have as much stake in because I don't go out of my way and watch nearly as many up-and-coming new documentaries that maybe I should be watching. But that's thanks to this show and pushing myself to actually following along with the movies that came out this year. My segment, The Oscar Watch, allowed me to have an actual stake in the award show, which is crazy because, truth be told, my podcast didn't actually get underway until about the fall time, maybe the beginning of fall, which is towards the end of the year, having missed a whole lot of movies to look out for. So here's to this coming year, and making some strong predictions from beginning to end. But that being said, for those of you who did not watch the Oscars, I'm going to recap the winners in a rapid fashion. I also want to include some of the biggest dubs and snubs and overall just favorite moments from the show to give you a full Oscars recap for everything that you may have missed. And, that way, if you didn't see the show, then you don't need to. You just listen to mine. And bish bash bosh, done. So, I have a list of the winners here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through, give mention to all of them, and then I'm going to talk about some of the key moments that I just want to add in my own little tidbits. So, I'm going to start from the bottom and just kind of zigzag my way up. We got Best Sound going to Top Gun Maverick. Best Production Design going to All Quiet on the Western Front. Best Film Editing going to Everything Everywhere All at Once. Best Costume Design going to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Best Makeup and Hairstyling going to The Whale. Best Cinematography going to All Quiet on the Western Front. Best Visual Effects going to Avatar: The Way of Water. Best Original Screenplay going to Everything Everywhere All at Once. We have the Best Documentary Short Subject, The Elephant Whisperers. Best Animated Short Film, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. The end of the title there was a little cut off, but I believe it was the horse. Best Director, going to Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Best Live Action Short Film, An Irish Goodbye. Best Supporting Actor, going to Ke Huy Quan. Best Animated Feature, going to Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Best Original Song, going to Natu Natu. Best Adapted Screenplay, going to Woman Talking. Best Original Score, going to All Quiet on the Western Front. We have Best Documentary Feature, going to Navalny. Best Supporting Actress, going to Jamie Lee Curtis. Best International Feature Film, going to All Quiet on the Western Front. Best Actress, going to Michelle Yeoh. Best Actor, going to Brendan Fraser. And the Best Picture, going to Everything Everywhere All at Once. So, that's a lot to unpack. And, I mean, congratulations to all the winners. Winning a category at the Oscars is one of the biggest accolades, I think, in the film industry that you could possibly get. That's why I cover it specifically on my show. And just some people claim that there's a lot of politics in it. And you know what? After this show, I do think that that exists. That being said, I don't think you can take that win away from any of these individuals for all the efforts that they put in. But that being said, I want to talk about, I think, some of the biggest snubs, because I think that's a more interesting conversation. And I think that there are 2 or 3 big ones that I want to talk about, because online there was a lot of conversation, and I did sort of have an opinion, and so did when I had Tyler on the show. We both shared this opinion. The biggest, I think, quote-unquote snub of the night was Jamie Lee Curtis winning for Best Supporting Actress over her co-star Stephanie Hsu, or potentially Angela Bassett, or Kerry Condon, or even Hong Chow for her performance in The Whale. A lot of people were thinking Jamie Lee Curtis, for how small of a role she played in that movie, maybe just on an actual, like, objective stance, maybe it didn't deserve that award as much as some of the others did. And what's my take on that? I'm going to double down, and I'm going to say I think that there's some truth to that. I genuinely think, as I actually was fortunate enough to see every single one of those performances as at time of recording, I think that that award definitely should have gone to Angela Bassett, if not going to Kerry Condon. And I think either would have been totally fair, especially going into my next point that I just want to mention. Because even though I think Jamie Lee Curtis was totally fine in that movie, the fact that she got a nomination, I'm going to be completely honest, as I always am on this show, I don't know if her performance was warranted of a nomination. I don't see... I think she was good, but I don't think that there was anything about that role that allowed an Oscar-worthy performance. That being said, Jamie Lee Curtis is very respected in this industry, so the fact that she was able to win an Oscar, I think she is well deserving of it for all the work that she's done in the past. And I think that that is what the Academy was sort of looking at, as well as with all the campaigning that was going on, allegedly. I do see the merit in giving Jamie Lee Curtis a win from that angle, but I think, if I'm being honest, there's a part of me that's saying you have to look at a year-by-year basis, objectively, who deserves this award, and I don't think it should have gone to her. I think it should have gone to either Angela Bassett or Kerry Condon, if I'm being honest. I do think that Stephanie Hsu was actually had a much bigger pull, but these are all conversations I've already had on the show. I won't waste your time reiterating that. That being said, I will say on the Kerry Condon part, I'm especially hurt that she didn't win it because of the fact that Banshees of Inisherin, I genuinely do believe, was my favorite movie of the year, and that includes Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think, for me personally, and what I look for in a movie, Banshees of Inisherin was able to give that, where Everything Everywhere All at Once was very, very enjoyable and absolutely deserved Best Picture. 100% deserved it. But my favorite movie was Banshees, and for Banshees to walk away with nothing was something I feared, and I'm actually I'm actually genuinely upset that it didn't win anything. It was nominated for so many categories. If the Academy is going to pull this thing where they give awards to people based on oh, well, you've been with us for so long or whatever. Or, sort of bending the rules of voting. It's ridiculous that it didn't win anything. And I think that the easiest way to grant this would have been to give Kerry Condon the win, just so that the movie Banshees of Inisherin was able to win something. Because it was deserving of something, as it's won a lot of stuff at the Critics' Choice Awards and I believe the BAFTAs and the Golden Globes and stuff like that. It was given its fair share of awards and accolades. I am a little bit saddened that it got no recognition whatsoever at the Academy Awards, but I digress. Let's see. And one of the biggest things too was Babylon not winning Best Original Score, which is something that I was very hopeful for it winning a lot of the precursors, and in this one to lose to All Quiet on the Western Front, it was just disappointing. It was just straight up disappointing. But anyways, those are some of the bigger snubs, I would say. Other than that, I do think most of these definitely deserved their wins. Pinocchio winning was not a surprise. Ke Huy Quan winning Best Supporting Actor was just such a touching and heartfelt moment. Brendan Fraser winning for Best Actor was a big thing that I don't know, that was a really big toss up. I think in our predictions video, we were pretty certain that it was going to go to Austin Butler, and the fact that it did end up going to Brendan Fraser, I'm going to be honest, not necessarily in hindsight, but Brendan Fraser winning makes me very happy, because I do think that he is very, very deserving of that award. And with his performance, I never did an Oscar watch for it, which is crazy considering that it won more than a lot of the movies that I did cover on the Oscar watch. Actually, that being a whole thing, we talked about, and Tyler mentioned this. Whichever movie between The Whale and Elvis won for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, we were thinking that whatever wins that one could go on to win Best Actor, and sure enough, The Whale won for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Brendan Fraser ended up winning Best Actor. So there was actually some correlation there. This might set a precedent in the future for that type of situation. Just going through, Michelle Yeoh winning Best Actress, I think is totally valid. I think All Quiet on the Western Front winning Best International Feature Film is valid. Tyler did send me a text message saying that RRR not getting nominated and Decision to Leave not getting nominated, both of those were snubs in their own right, although I do have a feeling that had both of them even been nominated, I still think All Quiet would have won. But that aside, I do think that RRR winning Naatu made me very happy, and I even have here listed my favorite moments of the show. There's 3 specific moments that I want to call mention to. If you didn't see the live show, this is not something that you can just look up online, unless you know what happened. But you can look up who won each category and stuff like that. These are specific moments that you just sort of had to be there for. One of which was, for each of the best original songs, they did a live performance for all of those songs. And in my opinion, listening and watching Naatu perform live was crazy. It was insane. It went so hard. I was, indulging in a beverage of sorts, and I was dancing around my basement, just having the time of my life listening to Naatu. It was on repeat in my head. I was playing that song like the whole weekend. Such a good time. So happy it won that award. I was stoked that it won. Another really heartfelt moment was Ke Huy Quan and Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford giving the award to him for when Everything Everywhere All at Once won Best Picture. They had this embrace, and he had a moment afterwards where he was like, "Goonies never say die" and stuff like that. And it was so wholesome and heartfelt, and it was just amazing to watch. But an underrated, very quick moment was Jimmy Kimmel did a bit where he talked about and joked about Will Smith's slap last year. And he did this thing where he was like calling out specific celebrities. He's like, if you want to slap me, like, you got to deal with all these people. And then, everyone had their like little quick moment to the camera. And then he was like, you're going to have to get past Spider-Man. And then the camera goes to Andrew Garfield, and then Andrew Garfield, rather than doing a pose, just sort of like shrugged and like had a really awkward but really funny like smile on his face, but it wasn't really a smile. It was sort of like a wince. I thought it was hilarious because I think a lot of people were expecting Tom Holland. So when Andrew Garfield just popped up and just kind of shrugged, everyone started laughing in the whole place. I thought it was very funny. Like that was a moment for me where I was like, yeah. I'm not a huge Jimmy Kimmel fan though, I will say. I don't I'm not going to talk about that too extensively. I just don't know if I vibe with this humor. I don't know. I think that he was kind of carried by other people, and some of his jokes felt unnecessary. Like he was really taking digs at specific movies, and I don't know if some of the like I understand it's supposed to be uplifting and you can roast movies and stuff like that, but it just felt sometimes it just missed for me, which is fine. It's whatever. I don't know if he's the best host, but they'll keep bringing him back probably. I don't know who I'd want to see host next year. I don't know if that's already been predetermined, but I'm curious what they end up coming up with. But closing thoughts and preparations for next year is my last little bullet point here, and I think it was a good Oscar ceremony. I think that this year was filled with a lot of really good movies. Everything Everywhere All at Once was spectacular. Banshees of Inisherin was spectacular despite not winning awards. The Fabelmans, Elvis, The Whale being a movie that genuinely made me sob. I wish you know what, in hindsight I should have done some sort of segment on it. Maybe I will, but it's a little personal, but it's just The Whale really just elicited certain emotions for me that I have never gotten from other movies. Will I watch that movie again? I don't know if I could stomach it. I genuinely think that the movie upset me, but also was beautiful in its own way. And there were so many other movies like that this year that, you know, with Pinocchio winning Best Animated Feature, I think that just all around a lot of deserving wins this year. And I don't think anyone is upset about Everything Everywhere winning Best Picture, as opposed to last year when Coda won. I think people didn't really care as much. But preparations for next year, I mean, like I mentioned before, I started this podcast in the fall, and I'm already established. I know my structure. I'm going into this next year. I'm going to be following along and giving everyone some Oscar watches, and I'm going to see if I can get more specific predictions done. And I want to do all those, and I think we'll have a good time with it, and I'm excited for where this show goes next. Now, the rest of the episode will take an interesting detour. We've been so focused on the Oscars, but now that that's all done, let's take a moment to revisit the past while also looking to the future. Both of which we will do after the break. What movies would you like to see me talk about on the Oscar Watch? If you're listening on Spotify, head over to YouTube and let me know in the comments below, and I will cue that movie up for a future episode. Now, let's get back to the show. When we take a look at what Hollywood has been doing recently or in recent years, it's no surprise that some of the highest grossing films to hit theaters are a part of larger franchises, whether that be the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, or even more recently, Avatar. This segment that I am titling Franchise Focus will take a look at a franchise, and I'm going to give my thoughts on it from all aspects, being world building, characters, legacy, style, tone, its influence in the future, etc., etc. This past week, I noticed that a particular franchise is actually leaving Netflix this weekend. So I finally took the time to watch the original trilogy so that I could give my thoughts and analysis. So for the first iteration of Franchise Focus, I'm going to be taking a look at The Lord of the Rings. So The Lord of the Rings has quite a few things in its library of filmology, or yeah, sure, let's go filmology. I today have only seen, well, not just today, but you know what I mean. This past week, I've seen The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. Or I don't know if it's The Two Towers. That is out of context, that's a weird thing for me to say. But I mean, those of you who know these films know what I'm talking about. And basically, I'm going to give my thoughts on these three films as a trilogy, And yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna be going off of the stuff that I mentioned earlier, which is like world building, characters. I want to go over just the original plot, or not the original, but the official plot for all of these movies. The Fellowship of the Ring is the first one, and this is where we start to learn, generally speaking, a lot of these characters. So, if I can switch tabs over for a quick second, we learn basically that there is a ring that was very that is corrupt, that should realistically be destroyed because whoever is in possession of this ring is just their mind is corrupted. With, I believe, the original person who is corrupted by this ring being um they pronounce it so many different ways, but it's spelled out Sauron, but I've heard pronunciations of like Sauron, which I think is actually a really cool pronunciation of it. But that is the main villain. The main villain of this whole franchise, or of this trilogy, is the Eye of Sauron. But we meet our main characters here. We have Frodo Baggins, played by Elijah Wood. We have his trusty sidekick, Samwise Gamgee, played by Sean Astin. We have we have Gandalf, played by Ian McKellen. We have the trio of heroes that basically accompanies Frodo, which is Aragorn, played by Viggo Mortensen. We have Legolas, played by Orlando Bloom, and then we have there's a lot of characters, so I don't know if I'm gonna get through all of these, but there he is. John Rice Davies plays Gimli, and then we have Boromir, played by Sean Bean, who was also in there for this specific movie. We are teased for. Actually, I don't even know if I should. I'll mention him in the second movie, but obviously Andy Serkis plays the iconic Gollum Smeagol character. There's Cate Blanchett, who plays Galadriel. There's Dominic Monaghan, who plays Merry Brandybuck. We have more people. Billy Boyd playing Pippin Took. We have Hugo Weaving playing Elrond. We have so many. It's a really big franchise. And that's what I like about these movies, is it really does give you a huge cast of characters. Each of them, I mean, a lot of them not getting a whole lot of screen time at times, but they do each get their individual moments to shine realistically, and they all have their value. And a lot of different groups and bottlenecks and different storylines happening all at once. And for the Fellowship of the Ring, if I'm not mistaken, it basically just introduces us to the story, and this is what's going to happen. This is the adventure that our characters are set on. And I'm going to be honest, of the three movies, The Fellowship of the Ring was definitely the weakest for me. There was a lot of walking around with the characters, not as much action. And those of you who have seen these movies know that Two Towers and The Return of the King have very, very, very big action set pieces and battle scenes. We got the Battle of Helm Deep, and then the Battle of... I actually don't know what I don't know what the name of the battle is for The Return of the King, but there are war elephants. We love war elephants. The best documentary feature, The Elephant Whisperers, probably loves that scene. Probably loves, maybe not, I don't know. But that's something to talk about with these movies too, is the war slash battle sequences are some of, if not the best war slash battle sequences in live action Hollywood that I have ever seen. There's not a lot of examples, because obviously in things like anime, it's a little different. In anime, you can get away with having crazy animation for some of these wars and battles, but you don't get the opportunity a lot in Hollywood to have huge, army versus army, just full on battles with a lot of people with different abilities. Like, you can have a movie like, well, I gotta be careful what I say here. I was gonna say a movie like All Quiet on the Western Front, or like a lot of other war movies with soldiers going on the battlefield. That's one thing. But to have a battle like this, where everyone is holding shields and swords, and it's more medieval, you have people with bow and arrows, and you have a whole ranged archery sort of branch of your military. And then you have certain people like Gandalf, who is a wizard using magic to fight. And you have Legolas, who is just a crazy good archer, doing all sorts of things like that. I think that's what makes the Avengers battle sequence so magnificent is because it's not just an army versus an army, it's two armies that are supernatural and that are just beyond comprehension of reality, and that is the fantasy genre. So that's something I really love about this, and I didn't even know that I was a huge fantasy fan until I watched these movies. I gotta say though, I'm a huge Narnia fan. I think that if Narnia was done very well, and if it was done to the style of movies like this, I think that Narnia would be even more famous than it currently is. Because Narnia is not that famous anymore. It's really not, because there was a couple movies that flopped. But I think Narnia genuinely has the type of story that, if done well and put to screen well, could genuinely be bigger than Avatar or Marvel, in my opinion. And definitely in the same territory as The Lord of the Ring. I don't know if that's a hot take to say. Maybe a Narnia segment is something that I should consider. As far as the characters go, though, I mean, if I had to say what my favorite characters were, they definitely changed throughout the... I think in the first movie, my favorite character was Gandalf. I thought Gandalf was really, really cool. Because he definitely looks older, but he fights and he plays as though he's younger but looks older, if that makes sense. Which I think is really cool. In the second movie, I think my favorite character is probably Aragorn. Yeah, probably Aragorn. I mean, in the Battle of Helm's Deep, he's really cool. I also I mess with Theoden. Theoden was really, really cool in the second movie. I really loved his character. In the third movie, though, I mess with Samwise Gamgee so much. He is so... I love Sean Astin's portrayal in that third movie. I think the second movie is the best. I think the Battle of Helm's Deep was just so good that it became my favorite. That became my favorite of the trilogy. But the Return of the King was very, very good, because as soon as you hit that halfway point of the movie, it's just action upon action upon action, whereas Fellowship of the Ring was definitely building. Now, I'm only talking about characters and action here, but there's more to a franchise than that. The legacy and the world building. We got to understand all the different kingdoms that exist in this world. We understand the Shire. We understand the oh my gosh, there's so many different terminology that there's no way I'm gonna be able to remember everything. The Ents, I believe they're called, the Ents, like the tree people, I think is really cool. There was a huge spider, which I don't have arachnophobia, but even me, I was like, damn, this be creepy. So if you're afraid of spiders, then good luck. But I mean, you have all the orcs fighting, the elves. You have, the dwarves. I'm not trying to be crude. That's literally what the species of like Gimli is, and it's just, there's so much going on, and there's so many different elements in different species where everything blends together so magically and so coherently that it really just opens up this entire world with different locations, different settings. I love how they split the group up. So in the Two Towers, for example, you have the group with Frodo, Samwise Gamgee, you have Smeagol, Gollum, played by Andy Serkis. You have that as like one group. Then you have Pippin and Merry with, I believe, the Ents in another area. And then you have Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli. You have that all in like a third area where they're fighting their battle. And I love the whole Legolas and Gimli thing of like every single war they like count their kills. So you have Gimli saying 12, 13, 14. You can just hear that in the background as they're fighting. I love that. I think that's so, it just adds to the characters, creates some funny moments while also having a lot of drama and a lot of really climactic tension building. You really feel the stakes of what will happen if Sauron is able to get this ring, and what he's able to do with it if he were to succeed and defeat all of them. You see the losses for the good guys, but you're also like, you're with them for their victories, because even their victories, you feel a sense of achievement, but at the end of the day, you know that these victories don't really mean anything, because it's all up to Frodo. Because if Frodo doesn't destroy the ring, then all these victories mean nothing, and Sauron can literally just squash them if he chooses. So that all has to do with the stakes and the world building and everything like this. The use of the elfish language was really big. The style, the cinematography of all the mountain shots and the beautiful horizons. and all the skylines and the use of time versus or sorry, day versus night. I think there's a lot of different elements stylistically in this movie that do really well, and it does remind me genuinely of Narnia. And obviously because they're both like the fantasy genre. There's not a lot of fantasy genre movies that are coming out, or at least not ones that are particularly good. I think an example of this, and this is definitely for a future episode, I want to tackle Artemis Fowl, which is a children's book series that I mean, it's like young adult actually. I've read the first book recently, and I want to read more of the books as research for a future segment. But there was a Disney movie that came out for it, and it was trash. That again I can talk about, but it's the type of thing where it definitely opens up this world of fantasy, and I feel like that's something that we've been missing recently in Hollywood. Is there's a severe lack of solid fantasy movies. The legacy of this movie is huge because even though these movies came out in 2001, 2, and 3, right? Pretty sure. What's the year on these? Yep, 2001, 2002, and 2003. So they came out year after year. Now, the biggest thing that I want to mention about these movies is that when I watched them in rapid succession, but these came out a year apart from each other. And the movies, realistically, they don't really stand alone as well. You really do want to watch them almost as one big 9-hour block of time, which is, I think, what is so intimidating, or what intimidated me originally from watching them. And it's just because it's such a big time commitment. But once you make that time commitment, I genuinely understand why even to this day, nearly, actually no, 20 years later at this point, why this franchise has such a big following. And it's because of everything when it comes to iconic characters, the fantasy vibe, the beautiful landscapes, the world building, and as far as the different species of characters, the different languages, the different ideologies that we follow. That's what makes me want to go and watch the Hobbit movies, which I understand. I knew Bilbo Baggins was a popular name, but I didn't realize that had to be more for the Hobbit, because Bilbo was only in this movie very briefly, so I don't know enough about that. But it definitely intrigues me to want to keep watching. Whereas Star Wars does a very similar thing, but I think where a lot of franchises are failing is they don't have the same level of like iconic characters. All the characters and all the main players in these movies are so different from each other, which you can't really say for that many franchises outside of Star Wars. One thing, and we'll talk about Avatar because that's definitely a segment that I want to dive into, because the next few years are going to be dominated by Avatar for sure. Something that I think Avatar struggles with right now is iconic characters that are different from each other. I feel like a lot of the characters right now are too similar, and that is not great. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, even Marvel to an extent does a very good job of having so many individualized characters, and that's something that I think is super impressive to be able to do. If I had to rank these three movies just based on how I love them, I think I'd go Two Towers 1, Return of the King 2, Fellowship of the Ring 3. I think that's where I would put them. The first two spots, I could interchange them on any day of the week, though. I do think Fellowship of the Ring was a little bit. I understand that it needed to build characters and stuff like that, but and like build the story up. The "You shall not pass" is a very epic moment, even to this day. So, not a weak movie in this trilogy, though. A very, very strong trilogy that I think just has so much potential. I'm sure that they're gonna start building more into this. I feel like I've seen somewhere that they want to add more. As far as this franchise goes, I mean, this is how you do a franchise correctly. The world building, the characters, a really solid legacy, a style that is so unique from every other franchise, and a tone that never disappoints. I mean, you feel certain senses of doom, but you feel really high highs with the victories in battle. The whole Legolas taking down a war elephant sequence was so amazing to see. Aragorn was incredibly cool. Boromir being one of the lead characters that died very early was tragic, but had ripple effects for the rest of with the rest of the series with Faramir. And there's so many talking points that I could dive into that I just don't have time for necessarily. But at some point, I will need to watch the Hobbit movies as well, because I'm just blown away by how much I enjoyed this trilogy. I've heard that they aren't quite good as the originals though, but I'm also looking at the ratings and they look pretty solid anyways. So if you've seen the Hobbit movies, tell me which is your favorite movie. But yeah, I really enjoy the fantasy that this franchise portrays. So once I'm done binging some other stuff that's been recommended to me, I will probably go ahead and check out those movies as well. If you've seen these movies, let me know what you think of them. I was glad, or I am glad that I was able to watch them, but when we come back, we'll talk about some stuff that is yet to hit theaters and that will hit theaters sometime later this year. Until then, stay tuned. If you are enjoying the show so far, remember to check out the Cinema Spotlight Spotify playlist and subscribe to keep up with future episodes. Now, let's get back to the show. After taking a glimpse at some of the films that have come out this year so far, I can't lie to you, I was super nervous about the overall quality of movies that were going to be released this year as a whole. Especially since this past year felt like a very strong year for movies, and there was just a lot of just really eye-opening stuff that came out. I was just super nervous about it. But that being said, I've done some light digging, and I've actually compiled a list of movies that are going to be coming out this year some point between this Friday and all the way in December. And this list of movies is just movies that I am personally really looking forward to, if only for potential Oscar implications here. They're actually more than I thought that they were going to be in that area. These aren't ranked, they're actually just sort of in the order that they were on the website. And neither are these movies the only movies worth checking out. These are just, again, the ones that I am personally really looking forward to that look really interesting. And plus, I've only looked at one website. I very well could be missing some big ones. And in some cases, I'm not including it because I'm just not that excited for it. Plus, amazing movies pop up out of the blue all the time. So this list really can only get bigger over time. I think All Quiet on the Western Front, the one on Netflix, I don't think that was one that everyone had their eyes glued to before that was released on Netflix. And you saw what happened. It won plenty of awards at this year's Oscars. So that being said, let's get into some of the ones that I am personally very excited for that are getting released this year. And the first one is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The MCU has been an absolute shit show recently. A lot of the movies just have not been very impressive. They haven't been that great. In all honesty, I've actually sort of been burnt out of Marvel, and I've been falling behind, which is really bad, but at the same time, do I really care? If the movies are not up to the sort of quality that I like to watch them, or the quality that they were already at in the past for Infinity War and Endgame and everything like that, it has me wavering on them. And even Ant-Man, I wasn't in Quantumania. I will watch that at some point on Disney Plus, but I didn't feel like going out of my way and watching that in theaters. I just didn't really feel like it. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, that's a different story. I am very, very, very curious what they're going to do with this movie. I think that this is going to be one of the better MCU movies that has been released, or I really hope it is. It has a very high sense of, it's got to be able to pull it off. I think it can do it. I mean, there are a lot of lovable characters in here. The trailers look great. I trust James Gunn as a creative director. I think that he can do it. He's already established and proved that he can do it. Not just with MCU projects, but just everything that he puts his hands on. He is able to make something that is very entertaining and in his own auteur. So I'm very excited for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The next one I have listed here is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. There's not a lot to say about this one, except for the fact that I have seen every Indiana Jones movie, and I gotta be honest, I'm a sucker for a good adventure flick. I do love a good adventure movie. And Indiana Jones, if this is the last movie that we're gonna see with Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, then it's gonna be a spectacle regardless. I just want to hear that music, that da 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 da. I want to hear it. I want to watch this movie in theaters. It's gonna be a great time, I think. I don't know how good it's gonna be. Genuinely, I don't know, but I don't really care. I just want to support this franchise. Speaking of franchises, we got two more well, I don't know if you would consider the first one a franchise. Would you consider Wonka a franchise? Wonka is a movie starring Timothy Chalamet as a younger Willy Wonka, and there's something about that that really intrigues me, and I really want to watch it for that reason. I don't know if you would consider it a franchise. There's only been two Willy Wonka movies, and I don't know if this even goes with the lore of either of them. Maybe. I think it's its standalone thing. I don't exactly know what type of story we're looking at here, considering that Charlie Bucket is half the story. I don't like Charlie Bucket, but that's a whole other bit. I mean, come on. It's a kid who had a chance at a lot of money, and he's a selfish little prick. Anyways, the next franchise movie that we're looking at here is Dune. Dune Part 2. I haven't seen Dune Part 1. I've been told you have to read the book. I don't know if I'll do that. I don't make enough time in my schedule for reading. I probably should read Dune first, but at the very least, like, I want to see Dune 1 and then enjoy Dune Part 2 in theaters. I feel like it's a similar thing where the first Avatar came out and I didn't see that in theaters, and then the second one came out and I was like, okay, after the fact I went and I saw it in theaters. The next movie on the list here is Oppenheimer, which I think is a big one that a lot of people are looking at. It's a Christopher Nolan movie, and it has I believe Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer, and I don't know what the movie is exactly going to be like. I don't know if it's just going to be a biography or if it's going to have a lot more to it. I'm very intrigued by this, though, because Cillian Murphy is one of the best modern day actors. I think you can put him up next to someone like an Andrew Garfield for sure, or someone like I mean, Austin Butler is going to get more roles, I think, for sure. I think Paul Mescal is going to get some more roles. I think Timothy Chalamet very well could be on his way to hitting that territory. So these are some actors that you're looking at here. And, I mean, Oppenheimer just absolutely has what it takes to be one of the best movies of the year, especially being a Nolan film. Nolan films always do very well, and people love Nolan movies, so... The next one here is actually, I didn't know this was coming out. Harold and the Purple Crayon. There's a live action Harold and the Purple Crayon movie coming out. If you've never heard of this, basically it's a children's book with a kid with a purple crayon, and he basically has the power to create whatever he wants. And it's a kid's concept. I think it'll be a kid's movie, but it had, I believe, Lil Ray Howery at the helm of this project alongside Zachary Levi. So, I think it's going to be a comedy. I think it'll likely be in the same tone as Free Guy. Or maybe not, I don't know. I think that this is not going to be PG-13. This is going to be a kid's movie with maybe some adult humor thrown in there. I think that there's a lot of potential here. Tetris is a movie coming out talking about I believe, the story of Tetris being made. I think. I don't know exactly the specific details about it. What I do know is that Taron Egerton is going to be in that movie. And I think it's going to be a really fun watch. I think Tetris has, again, potential to be a very good movie this year. So doesn't the movie called Air, which looks to be a similar type of vibe, having to do more with not the foundation of Tetris, but with the foundation of, I think, Nike? I have a little tab pulled up here, so let me see if I can see. I think it's Nike. That would make sense. Air, where is it, so I'm not wasting people's time. But just while I'm scrolling, I do know that there is a lot of really interesting looking animated movies coming out this year, ranging from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which the first version, Into the Spider-Verse, actually won Best Animated Feature the year that it came out. So, and people say that that's one of the best animated movies ever, which I'd have to agree. And I think if the sequel is comparable, then we could be looking already at a Best Animated Feature winner. But we have the Super Mario Bros. Movie that's coming out, which has a lot of attention surrounding it because it's Super Mario, and it's like the first Mario movie realistically that has come out in years and years and years. And then we also have Elemental, which is Pixar's way of trying to get its hat back in that animated movie hypothetical ring, I guess. or figurative ring. So any of those realistically could take home this win alongside any of the other random stuff that just sort of pops up throughout the year. Now, as I was looking for Air, I was able to find it. It's being directed by Ben Affleck, and Ben Affleck actually directed one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time, being Argo. That movie, I think, did win Best Picture at some point. And it's starring Ben Affleck, it's starring Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, Viola Davis, Chris Tucker, Marlon Wayans, Chris Messina. It is a very, very stacked cast. And interestingly enough, I actually think Ben Affleck as a director is criminally underrated. He knows what he's doing. He definitely knows what he's doing. If you've seen Argo, you know that he knows what he's doing. And him and Matt Damon working together is always going to be super interesting. I'm a huge Jason Bateman fan. I think that as a comedian, he's good, but he plays a very dry character very well. And Viola Davis is fantastic in literally anything you want to throw her in. So, those are all options there. Another movie that's coming out that I'm very curious about is Beau is Afraid. It's a Joaquin Phoenix movie being directed by... Oh, man. Oh, here it is. Okay. Ari Aster, which, if you don't know who that is, they directed Midsommar and Hereditary, two of what people are calling some of the best horror movies that have come out in recent memory. And they are modern day classics of the best horror movies. Ari Aster knows what they're doing as far as really trippy, but really creepy and disturbing movies. So Beau is Afraid, especially with Joaquin Phoenix at the helm of that project, that's going to be something, and I don't even know really what it's about, but that's going to be something I feel like you got to check out. Even if you're not a fan of horror movies, I feel like you got to stomach this one. You got to see what it's all about. Some of the other movies that are coming out that I don't really know as much about, but they look interesting. The Covenant is one that it looked like Jake Gyllenhaal was going to be in it, and I'm just a Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I don't really know what it's about, but the word covenant means, I believe, commitment. So I don't know what that was in reference to. Oh, sorry, it's a movie directed by Guy Ritchie. So if that's something you're into, it has Anthony Starr. That's a name I recognize. Aside from his forays into franchise fare and big budget tentpoles, Guy Ritchie is known for his trademark talky crime capers. Gyllenhaal stars in this serious action thriller about a special ops veteran who returns to Afghanistan to find the interpreter who previously rescued him and carried him to safety. Interesting. I mean, I'm with it. That sounds like something right up my alley. And we also were looking at a movie called Ghosted, which has Ana de Armas and Chris Evans. And I love both of those actors. I think they were great alongside each other in Knives Out, which is its own thing. It looks to me like a type of... I don't even know. But it looks like a rom-com. It looks like a rom-com with some action, which... sign me up. It looks like it's going to be on Apple Plus, though, which I'm not stoked about because I want to see it in theaters. But if it's in theaters, then that's cool, too. I'm also looking at something here, Asteroid City, being directed by Wes Anderson. I saw the cast. Looks like a huge cast, which is, Wes Anderson is known for his big casts. Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, Tilda Swinton, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Bryan Cranston, Ed Norton, Adrian Brody. I mean, Margot Robbie, Steve Carell. Come on. I mean, it's gonna be a thing. It's gonna be a spectacle, that's for sure. And then I believe, the last one here on my personal list is a movie that I am genuinely so excited about because we haven't gotten one in a hot second. This movie is called The Killer. And it is being directed by David Fincher. And for those of you who are fans of the show, I'm sure I've said this before, David Fincher is probably my favorite director. And it's mostly because of what he does best. Those are my favorite types of movie, which are suspenseful thrillers, police dramas. So we're looking at Seven. We're looking at The Zodiac. We're looking at Gone Girl. We're looking at Fight Club. Okay, those types of movies. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. These movies are The Game with Henry Douglas? Michael Douglas. Oh my god, not Harry Douglas. What am I talking about? Michael Douglas. Those are all movies that I really, really, really enjoyed, and The Killer just looks like it's gonna be another one added to that library, which is just, I'm so excited. So there are a lot of really exciting things coming out, and so many of these movies look amazing, and I'm stoked to see how they end up being. I'm personally gonna be continuing my binge of movies that that have already been released that I'm embarrassed to have not actually seen, because there's a lot of them. Shawshank Redemption is one that I know. You might be listening saying, "What the James, you haven't seen Shawshank Redemption, but you call yourself a media expert?" Yes. Yes, and that is not the only big movie that I haven't seen, but I am working on it, okay? I promise you. And maybe as I watch them, I can do some segments on them. Wink, wink. But with so many great movies on the horizon, it's going to be just a great time to be a movie fanatic. One thing is for sure, the Cinema Spotlight will be back and better than ever. Let me know in the comments what your most anticipated movie is for this year. I'll try to have more episodes coming at you soon. I've been your host, James Sena, and let's shift that spotlight onto our outro. I want to thank everyone for listening to the Cinema Spotlight. If you enjoyed, please leave a like on the video and give the show a rating on Spotify. And if you could take a moment to subscribe to the show, I would really appreciate it. Follow me on Instagram at SenaJames35 for updates on when new episodes get released. If you want to let me know what movies to check out, head over to YouTube and drop a comment or two. That's all I got. Stay classy, friends.